Ottawa is expected to move forward with new regulations aimed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, despite Friday's Supreme Court ruling that said the government overstepped with its Impact Assessment Act. How will provinces respond if the federal government decides to go ahead with more? For more on this, we're joined by Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta. Danielle, Premier, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Great to speak with you on this because actually you've been quite busy the past few days. I'm sure you're busy all the time. But when we're talking about this Impact Assessment Act being ruled against by the Supreme Court of Canada, what sort of an impact do you expect that to have in some future discussions when it comes to, the federal government wanting to go ahead with an emissions cap on the oil and gas industry? And also it's a clean electricity regulations. What sort of impact do you think that ruling on Friday could end up having on those efforts?
Well, I hope that the federal government reads the ruling as I have been, because the Supreme Court makes it very clear that the Constitution matters, that there are division of powers. The court expects those to be respected. They don't want one level of government using a workaround to try to regulate indirectly what they're not allowed to do directly. And they have an expectation of cooperative federalism. Their view in the judgment is that we have equal powers to regulate the environment. And they assert that the province also has the ability to be passing these kinds of policies. And we have taken that approach right from the beginning. I have attempted with our federal counterparts to work with them on a 2050 carbon neutrality target. And I'm hoping that they come to the table with a new, renewed spirit of cooperative federalism rather than thinking they can act unilaterally.
Yeah, quite a different target than the federal government would like in terms of the timeline there. But when you're talking about that sort of, equal responsibility, that it is a shared jurisdiction, the environment is, and the ruling on Friday saying that it's unconstitutional, that this was provincial territory. But when you're thinking about the oil and gas emissions cap or the clean electricity, do you see those as being provincial territory then?
100%. I mean, it's quite clear in Section 92, the ability to develop our natural resources and develop conservation policies around them. It's written right there as exclusive provincial jurisdiction. Same with electricity. It's written right in our Constitution that electricity is also provincial jurisdiction for a good reason. It's because every province has its own natural endowments, and we have the expertise to be able to determine what the pace of development should be and what the best policies around that are. The federal government is well beyond not only their constitutional ability, but also beyond their practical ability. They just don't know these sectors, and therefore they should be working with us to achieve the joint objective of reducing emissions. I mean, the thing to keep in mind is that our energy sector has been a leader on emissions reduction. We phased out coal already 7 years earlier than the 2030 defined target. We also were the first to develop emissions pricing around industrial emissions. And we have a number of our industrial players that have net zero by 2050 targets. So we're being responsible. We're approaching the table in a spirit of cooperative federalism. And I hope the federal government takes this judgment and decides to do the same.
So if the federal government does move forward with its emissions cap and the clean electricity regulations, what would your moves be?
Well, we won't follow it. I mean, I think the Supreme Court has made it pretty clear that we have the jurisdiction to be able to regulate our resources in our own way. And anything that comes through that is a cap that is unrealistic, unachievable, and the technology is not there is a de facto production cap. And they're not allowed to do that. So we, again, have always approached this with a spirit of cooperation. It was the first conversation I had with the Prime Minister. I established an emissions reduction plan in April. I asked if we could come together for a joint panel. We've got deputy ministers in Ottawa as we speak, talking with their counterparts. And we have been doing the hard work of figuring out what those abatement curves should look like so that we can achieve the milestones. That's what cooperative federalism looks like. And that's what we've been doing. We just hope that the federal government comes to the table with that same spirit so that we can actually make some real progress and stop the fight. I think industry wants to see the federal and provincial government working together, but I must tell you that if they're going to continue to put forward unilateral policy, I'm going to continue to fight back against it.
Another potential project that you've been working on recently, Premier, has been the possibility of an Alberta pension plan. And you had a town hall over the phone last night. It sounds like a lot of callers, a lot of interested people in getting some details on the plan. But all of the details aren't really out there yet. They're not really defined at this point. Do you have a timeline of when people would be able to expect to get, the minutia of how this is going to work or how it could work?
Well, we have all of the details on albertapensionplan.ca. We are looking at the legislation, which defines how the distribution of assets should work, which would entitle Alberta to $334 billion. And that would allow for about a $1,400 saving per person and $1,400 saving per employee, or it could allow us to increase benefits. We're going to make sure with legislation in the fall that any decision is put to the people in a referendum, should they choose, that we will have an equivalent or better benefits or equivalent or lower contributions, and we'll let Albertans decide. This has been a conversation that has happened in our province going all the way back to 2001, is how does Alberta assert the same rights that Quebec has? Quebec has its own pension plan, they collect their own taxes, they have their own police force, they have their own immigration system. And I think that this is just a conversation that's been in the works for a long time. I'm just completing the work that my predecessors started, and we'll leave it to Albertans to make the choice.
What is the math on how Alberta would be entitled to that 53% of the CPP assets? Because I do think that is a question that people still have.
Yeah, what we have looked at is the legislation. We ended up bringing forward a actuary who can do the analysis on this, and it's the over-contributions that Albertans have made since the inception of the plan, along with the compounded interest. And that's the reason why we ended up with that number. So we're going forward on that basis and consulting on that basis. We've written a letter to, or are in the process of writing a letter to the finance minister to get their response to it. And that's what we're consulting on right now.
Some of the callers suggested that some of the questions, I guess, in an online survey, they didn't give an option to say whether they weren't interested in an Alberta pension plan just for the province itself. There wasn't a question that said yes or no, essentially, that it was, what do you think of this idea for this pension plan versus, having that opportunity to say, I don't like the idea. I don't think it is a good idea. Do you think is that going to be part of a future survey? Is that just sort of the beginning? Or do you think that you might have worded it a bit differently now that you've heard the reaction to it?
Well, I think people need to understand what the implications are. Change of anything is always complicated, and I wanted to make sure that people understood the amount of assets we were entitled to, the extent of our overpayment, the fact that this overpayment is just going to continue on and on year after year, and the compounding going to continue on and on year after year. And already it's a very significant amount of savings that we would have for our ratepayers, or a significant amount of increase in benefits for our seniors. So I think people need to know that kind of information. And if they still say no, then I respect the will of the people. But I think that there hasn't been that information that has been out in the past. We want to get that out there. And then we'll take advice from our panel on whether or not we should proceed to a referendum, depending on the feedback we get.
Okay, so a referendum, it will depend on what your panel decides, and then it would go definitely to a referendum if you were going to move ahead with the pension.
Correct. I mean, they're coming back with a report for us on, I believe, May of 2024 to give us advice on whether they think that there is an appetite to put it to a vote. But that would be the only way that we'd make the change, is a referendum to the people.